for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the world of international justice,
Okay.
and we'll be using the really fascinating case of Osama al-Masri to kind of explore some of the issues there.
Right.
So imagine, right, you're a Libyan warlord, and you're accused of some pretty horrific crimes,
Uh-huh.
and you think you've escaped, you've escaped justice,
Right.
but then you're arrested in Italy while you're at a soccer match. A Juventus-Milan match, no less.
Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of a movie.
It really does.
But this is a real story, and it just highlights how complex these laws are, and politics and international relations, how they all come together.
Yeah, it's really attention-grabbing. Can you tell us a little bit more about why he was arrested in the first place?
Yeah, so al-Masri was apprehended on an ICC warrant.
The International Criminal Court.
Exactly, yeah. He was accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Wow.
And these alleged crimes took place at the Mitiga prison in Libya, starting back in 2011. And we're talking charges that carry a potential life sentence.
Oh, wow.
The ICC considered these accusations incredibly serious.
Yeah, that's a big deal. The ICC is like the top court for these kinds of international crimes, right?
Absolutely.
So we have a high-profile figure in Libya who's accused of these terrible crimes, arrested in Italy with an ICC warrant. I mean, you would think that's a clear path to justice.
You would think so.
Right.
But that's where it gets really interesting. The Italian court actually decided to release al-Masri.
What?
Yeah. They cited a procedural error.
A procedural error in a case this big.
I know, right?
What? What happened?
So apparently there's a very specific protocol when it comes to the ICC.
Okay.
And this protocol requires that the Italian justice minister be notified before any arrests related to the ICC.
Gotcha.
And it seems like this wasn't followed correctly in al-Masri's case.
So because of a paperwork issue, basically a man accused of these serious crimes is just set free.
Basically, yeah.
And then what? He just, walked away? What happened next?
Well, he was released and then promptly put on an Italian Secret Service aircraft
No way.
and flown back to Libya.
Wow.
Yeah, it caused a huge stir.
I bet.
Italian opposition lawmakers, they were furious.
Yeah.
Human rights groups around the world, everybody was just outraged.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They saw it as Italy just turning its back on international justice, completely disregarding the authority of the ICC. And this is where Italy's relationship with Libya becomes really important.
Okay, their relationship with Libya, right?
Yeah.
How does that all factor in?
Well, Italy has very strong ties to the Libyan government.
Okay.
And there's this speculation that putting al-Masri on trial, at The Hague, where the ICC is located,
Yeah.
that they could have really strained those ties.
So are we saying there's maybe a political motivation behind this to release him?
It's a theory that's worth considering.
Yeah.
You see, Italy gives a lot of support to the Libyan Coast Guard, which plays a big part in stopping migrants from reaching Europe.
Right. So this is a key part of their migration policy.
Exactly.
But, I mean, that policy's got its critics, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Human rights groups have been very vocal about that policy.
Yeah, because there are concerns about how those migrants are treated in Libya.
For sure.
So putting al-Masri on trial, I mean, he's a prominent Libyan figure. It could have, shined a light on some of the conditions in those detention centers in Libya.
Exactly.
And maybe even Italy's role in those centers.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that, well, some might prefer to just avoid,
It's getting more and more interesting. Okay, before we go any further, I have a question. Why was he even in Italy in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mystery, to be honest. Was it personal? Was it related to his role in Libya? We can only speculate, but it definitely raises even more questions.
Yeah, it really does. So we have this warlord accused of some pretty serious crimes. He's arrested and then released because of a paperwork error. Flown back to Libya. And then, you've got Italy's relationship with Libya and their migrant policies. There's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, I mean, al-Masri's release, this wasn't just, some quiet legal matter.
Right.
It really generated strong reactions from all sorts of different groups.
I can imagine. It wasn't just some procedure. It had, bigger implications, right? Whose reactions stood out to you?
I think the humanitarian groups working with migrants were some of the most vocal critics.
Makes sense.
They work directly with people who've escaped these detention centers where al-Masri is accused of committing these crimes.
Yeah.
They felt like this release was a betrayal.
Oh, wow. So after hoping for some accountability, it must have been a blow to those groups and to those migrants, right?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of responses did we see?
Well, Mediterranean, Saving Humans and Refugees in Libya, they issued a statement, and they called the release shameful and unbelievable.
Wow.
I mean, they were really angry and just couldn't believe it. They felt
Yeah.
very let down by the Italian authorities.
You know, hearing that just it really underscores the human cost here. This isn't just about legal technicalities. This is about people's lives.
Right.
Okay, so what about the ICC? What was their reaction to this?
Interesting. The ICC prosecutor's office, they chose not to comment.
Really? No official comment?
Yeah, silent.
Huh. It makes you wonder, are they like trying to stay neutral or are they working behind the scenes?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes silence speaks volumes.
It really does. So what about the European Union? They're always talking about human rights, rule of law. Surely they had something to say about this.
Well, the European Commission, they did release a statement.
Okay.
And they reaffirmed the commitment of all EU member states to cooperate with the ICC. And they emphasized, their dedication to international criminal justice and to combating impunity.
Yeah, but did they specifically mention al-Masri or Italy's actions?
Not really, no. What they did is they highlighted a 2023 EU summit where leaders committed to cooperating fully with the court, including the rapid execution of any pending arrests.
Oh, okay. So it was like a subtle reminder to Italy.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of like, hey, remember those international laws?
It seems like they're trying to walk a fine line here.
Oh, definitely.
Uphold the ideals of justice, but also navigate the complexities of, relationships with member states.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
Right, right. But this whole al-Masri case, it really raises some, deeper questions, right? I mean, beyond just the legal stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Like, what kind of questions?
Ethical questions.
Yeah.
This whole situation, it forces us to think about how justice isn't always straightforward.
Right.
Like, there are often conflicting interests, political pressures, and bureaucratic obstacles.
Yeah, and sometimes those obstacles, they win. It makes you wonder, how effective can these international justice mechanisms really be?
Yeah, it really raises questions about their strength and also about a nation's responsibility to cooperate with these international courts, even when it's maybe not politically convenient.
It's like a choice, isn't it? Your own national interests versus global justice.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And the al-Masri case, it's a perfect example of just how tough it can be to find that balance.
It really is. And it makes me think this dilemma goes way beyond this case, right?
Absolutely.
This is about how we deal with human rights violations and holding people accountable on a global scale.
Right. And while this al-Masri case might seem like an isolated incident, it really reflects some broader trends and challenges that international justice is facing.
Like what?
Well, we're seeing a rise in nationalism, right?
Yeah.
And populism around the world. And that often leads to skepticism toward international institutions.
Yeah, it's that us versus them mentality. Our interests come first.
Exactly.
And that makes countries less willing to cooperate, to give up some of their power.
Yeah, to adhere to the authority of these international courts.
Right. So could we see this whole al-Masri situation as a symptom of that?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, are these current international justice mechanisms even equipped to handle all of this?
Yeah, because if support for these institutions keeps eroding, I mean, what happens then?
Well, it could embolden people.
Those who commit human rights abuses.
Yeah, they'd know they could get away with it.
Scary thought. So, I mean, is there any good news here? Anything positive to focus on?
Well, despite all the setbacks, there's still people working on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know there are. It's just, it can be hard to see sometimes.
Working tirelessly to advance international justice. They're coming up with different strategies.
Okay, strategies. Like what?
Well, one approach is to strengthen the legal systems within individual countries.
So they can handle these cases themselves.
Exactly. Promote accountability at the national level.
So there's less reliance on international courts.
Right.
What else? I mean, are there any other avenues that are being explored?
Yeah, another strategy involves raising public awareness.
Okay.
About these issues, about international justice.
Get people engaged.
Yeah, educating them.
So they understand why it matters.
Exactly. And also mobilizing them to put pressure on their governments to do something.
Because the more people who are informed and care about this, then the more likely governments will feel like they have to act.
Right, exactly. Public support can be really powerful.
Yeah, it can. So this isn't just about, like, courts and legal system.
Right. It's about, us. It's about individuals, civil society, and states all working together to uphold these values.
Yeah, we all have a role to play, and cases like al-Masri's, as frustrating as they are, they can be powerful reminders of why this work matters. They show the real-world impact of these issues, and they show why we need to keep fighting.
Yeah. They inspire us to find new ways to uphold those principles of justice and accountability, especially as the world gets more and more complex.
Lots to think about. It feels like we've really gone deep here.
We have.
All the legal stuff, the politics, ethical dilemmas, the trends in international justice.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
A lot to digest. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the al-Masri case, what stands out to you as the most significant takeaway?
I think for me, it's how this case, even though it's just about one person, it shows us just how fragile this whole system of international justice is. It's built on cooperation. And as we've seen, that cooperation can be, well, shaky at best.
Right, especially when you've got these national interests clashing.
It reminds us that international justice, it's not just about laws written down somewhere. It takes the will to enforce them, to keep those promises, even when things get tough politically.
It's a constant battle. It really is. This al-Masri case, it's a reminder that this fight against impunity, it's ongoing, and it demands our attention and our commitment.
And it's also a reminder that justice isn't just some abstract concept. It has real consequences for real people, like those migrants who are stuck in those difficult situations.
Absolutely. Their voices, they often get lost, their stories go unheard. And when you have cases like this where a powerful figure seemingly escapes accountability, it can make them feel even more powerless.
That's tough. It's a tough reality to think about. But even with all that, we can't forget that there are people fighting for them, advocating for their rights and their dignity.
Yeah.
You've got humanitarian groups, activists, lawyers. They refuse to let the world forget about these migrants.
And their work, it's so crucial.
Yeah.
They're the ones shining a light on these injustices, holding those in power to account, and pushing for a system that really protects the vulnerable.
Yeah.
So when we think about the future of international justice, are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic?
That's a big question. What about you? How do you feel?
I don't know if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. It's more about recognizing how complicated it all is, all the obstacles, and the need to stay vigilant, to stay aware. I mean, the al-Masri case, it definitely revealed some weaknesses in the system, but it also got people talking. It raised awareness. And maybe, just maybe, it sparked a renewed commitment to find solutions.
Yeah, it's like a call to action. It's a reminder that this isn't a quick fix, it's a long road. And we all need to stay informed, stay engaged, and be willing to, challenge the way things are.
Exactly. We need to demand more from our leaders, hold them accountable to those promises they make, and support those organizations that are working to make a real difference.
You've summed it up perfectly. This al-Masri case, it's not just about one man. It's about this bigger struggle for justice and all the challenges we face if we really want to create a world where fairness and justice are a reality.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Right.
And what I really hope our listeners take away from this is that they have a part to play too.
So it's not just about the experts and the diplomats in those courtrooms.
No, not at all. It's about informed citizens. It's about people participating in these conversations, demanding transparency and accountability, and supporting the people and organizations working to make a difference. Every voice matters.
That's such an important point, and it's a good reminder as we wrap up. This deep dive, it took us through the laws, the politics, all the ethical issues, but ultimately it comes back to human rights, the fight for justice, and our shared responsibility to make sure those principles win out in the end.
Well said. I really hope this deep dive has inspired our listener to dig deeper into these issues, stay informed, stay engaged, and find their own way to help make the world a more just place.
Me too. Thanks for joining us on this exploration. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep fighting for that world where justice isn't just something we hope for, it's something we make real.